Hey guys, drdecks here. I had a question on YouTube about what was the question? How do I plan out a job? So for me, when I go on an estimate, I always start with a blank sheet of paper. Just a piece of standard white paper. And what I do is I'll go and I'll draw out the house, the schematic of the house. I'll take a couple pictures with my iPhone, and then I'll scale out what I think the client wants or what they've described to me. Sometimes people say, use your creativity, we are a blank canvas, do whatever you want. So it just kind of depends on the paper, what the people are feeling. So what I'll do is I'll try to create a design. Sometimes it might have some curves in it. It just depends on the client and what they want. I'll take these papers and eventually, I'll have 20 or 30 of them, and it's time to get cracking on some designs. So let's just say I have a design I'm working on. Now I have one loaded up in the computer that's already finished. It's actually the one we're starting to build right now. So I have a lot of information about it. So what I'll do is I'll start with the design of the house. So that's the first thing I do, is I kind of get a replica of what the house kind of looks like. I can get accurate with it. Alright, so I'm going to cut to the computer and I'm going to show you this house. Now it's not exactly like as drawn, but it resembles the house. There's some windows in it. That can take half of the time that I need to design the actual deck is in designing the house to give the homeowner a little bit more realistic look. Now I don't go crazy with landscape and trees and lakes and oceans and all this other stuff. A lot of these guys are just intense, but for me that's a little too much. So instead of that, I'll do a replica of the house, and if I feel like I have to throw in some flowers or something, I will. But for this particular design, or most of my designs, I don't. Once I have the house drawn out, okay, so there's the house, then I can kind of start figuring out what is it that I want to build for this client. This guy was down to do some really cool curves and some really interesting, unique space. So, and also we're on a really steep hill, so we're making completely usable space out of an unusable area, which I really like. I'm kind of down for that. I think it's pretty cool. I like to design in circles and curves, and part of my deal with that is I try to design my decking so that I don't have any unintentional seams in my deck boards, which means everything that I design, it butts intentionally somewhere. So it's very rare that I'll have just butt joints in the deck just anywhere. Everything has to break on a circular motion or a straight line. We do a lot of surface borders. So if you look at the computer, you'll see these borders that I've drawn in this particular design. And it flows really nice. But this main one here, this one I'm highlighting right now, it's that big for a reason, because it completely encompasses this space so that I don't have any breaks in this section of the deck. I'm really particular, man. You're not going to find a lot of deck builders that are as particular as me. They're out there. I know they are. I know you guys are out there. But for me, there's a certain set of prerequisites that I always have to do on every job, and I don't know if it's because I'm just becoming more OCD in my old age, or if I just don't care and this is how it's going to be, or if it's just quality that I'm after, or whatever. But regardless of the reason, I'll be able to get a length of decking that fits in here, and I won't have any seams. If I didn't have this circle, I'm going to move it out of the way. Okay. Now I've got seams all through this deck right here, and it would just drive me crazy. And I just can't handle it. It's just not acceptable. So, no. So I'm going to hit the back button, undo, okay, boom. So there you are. So I'm using software right now called Real-Time Landscaping Architect 2018, I think is the version I'm using right now. They'll probably have a release soon for 2019. Just like the title says, it's landscape design software. It's not really deck designing software, but it works so well with how I build that I use it for the 3D rendering capabilities alone. It doesn't do construction drawings. It won't give you a material takeoff. You have to do all that on your own. And maybe I can get into that a little bit. What it does do is it allows me to draw something like this, which is really cool. And we'll get into another video sometime about how I actually use the software to design with it and all the different features I use and how I create some of these curves and stuff that you have to really think outside the box about. But this video is more just about how I come up with an overall concept of what I'm doing for a client. And I might throw out 3 or 4 different designs to somebody if I don't get it right on the first one. And I also do charge for my time when I'm designing on the computer. I used to do all my designs for free, but unfortunately I'd be 60 estimates deep and I'd be spending 13 hours on a Saturday and designing a deck, and then the client's like, oh, well, we wanted to pay $10,000. Like, well, that doesn't even cover my design fee. Actually, it does. I'm just kidding, but you see what I'm saying? It's just like there was a lot of misconception there. So I had to start charging for my designs. So anyways, you can see again, like if we do a plan detail, I'm back on the computer here, and I pull from this point here. Okay, so we're under 20 feet, which is cool. So that's good. But over here, if we didn't have this border in, and I did a linear dimension, and let's lock it in. Put a grid on here. See, I'm over 20 feet. I'm at 26 something. So that won't work. That will not work for the design. There's too many seams in the deck. Now with that circle in place, we're money. I know it's still wasteful, yes. It's still waste material. But it just flows. So I'm going to put this in 3D mode, perspective mode, and you can kind of see now how I have these different levels. There's a fire pit in this particular project. I've got lots of lighting that's going in. And then what happens here is these stairs flare down, but in the middle of this deck, I didn't keep the staircase in the center because I wanted to make it into a bench. So you have this beautiful view that you guys can see. You've seen some of our construction videos of this site. And then you have this bench you can sit on and enjoy the fire pit and enjoy the view. Okay? So back to how I get this. How did I get to this? Well, it's a little bit of playing back and forth with the space, what you're allotted for your setbacks. We maximize this deck so that basically the property lines, I could pull up another version of this. I'm going to pull up the permitted drawing, which is going to be a lot more messy. So here's the framing design. So I drew this out. The computer or the software will not do this for you. So you got to spend some time. So put that into your estimate, your construction drawing time. That's all part of obtaining a permit. I have a certain fee that I'll use for that. I'll put these different paragraphs of information here. The upper deck, joist to be this size, beams to be this size, posts, footings, all that stuff. All positive connections, things like that. Once you have this in a file, you can pull on it in the future to do your next permit or your next drawings or your next construction or whatever for design. Now what's cool about this is, like, I think this deck actually drew the joists. Oh, add joists. Okay, so I drew those joists in custom. Because you see when I click the add joist button, it wants to put them in traditionally. Well, we're framing this deck non-traditional because we're running all the decking from the house out. So every piece, every stick I custom designed, I put it in, which takes a lot longer, but it's done the way I need it to be done for building. So I can actually figure things out when I'm on site of how to build this deck. So anyways, that's kind of how I come up with this design. I could, so I'm going to go back to the other one. Okay. But maybe you don't want to build in curves. Maybe you don't want to do circles. You don't have to. You can just delete this like this. Delete, delete, delete. As a matter of fact, let's just do that. Let's just delete all of it except for the house. Okay, now all I've got is a house, right? Okay, and I've got this hill. So now I'm just going to start drawing some squares, building a deck. So that's what this is all about. So people are wanting to know, how do you come up with your designs? So I've got the house drawn, and depending on what the client wants, this hill kind of represents a retaining wall that we're dealing with. So maybe I'll come out 24 feet. Boom. You could just draw a square. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. There you go. Boom, there's your deck. There's a square deck. You know, if you look at it in 3D mode, there's your deck. That's a very simple deck, but it's still a deck. So now I've got my deck drawn, and I just need to figure out my material list. So I can go into plan details and pick a linear dimension and go, okay, so how far is this beam going to go? Oh, that beam's 25 feet, whatever. So then I know I need 25 feet worth of beams for that particular run. And I'll go through and I'll figure all those out to make sure that I have the right lengths that I need to order from the lumber yard. And then I can figure out my joists, my beams, all my footings, how much concrete do I need. I can do a concrete calculator. Now that I have this many footings, I know they're this big, so I need this much concrete, that kind of thing. So it's very helpful. I use a computer a lot, and sometimes I'll bring the computer to work. If I have a really complicated design, sometimes I'll bring the computer to work to verify measurements. Sometimes I have to do it. It's just what's necessary. All right, guys, so I hope that explains a little bit of how I come up with some of my designs. What's cool about designing on a computer is you can hit the back button as many times as you need to make it happen. So just remember that you can do it in paper and do it on paper and use an eraser, or you can do it on a computer and you can always undo your recent piece or recent work or whatever it was that you were trying to make, and come up with some really cool, flowing, amazing designs. And that's kind of what I do. If you like what you saw, please click the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified every time we're putting out new content, please click the bell icon as well. Thank you very much and have a great day.